A beautiful Saturday to you, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for joining us for this edition of your favorite news magazine program, 90 Minutes in Africa, coming to you from my media prime, the African Eye. I'm BOH Elvis at the microphone for presentation. Today, we are going to be taking a look at the recolonization of Africa, the West-East struggle. As you must have noticed, Russian, French, and American leaders have been crisscrossing the African continent to win support for their positions on the war in Ukraine. And some say this is the most intense competition for influence on the African continent since the Cold War. And we decided to take a look at the African angle. How do we in Africa see the ongoing visits of our diplomatic partners across the continent? Why is it that right now the scramble for the soul of Africa seems to be top on the agenda with our Western and Eastern partners? And that is the topic we are going to be discussing today, the recolonization of Africa, the West-East struggle, recolonization in quote, of course. And my guests are already with me in the studio for today's edition of the program. I use the opportunity to welcome Yagaka Gabriel, who is a regular panelist on 90 Minutes in Africa. We give you a gun salute after a long time we've not seen you on the show. Welcome to the program, Yagaka Gabriel.
Thank you, Mr. Boy. It's my pleasure. And I'm happy to be back here to contribute to all the discussions that can help us edify ourselves on the different happenings in the African continent. I equally seize the opportunity to extend my greetings to the other panelists, and I hope that we will be able to really dissect the issues at hand.
Thank you, Yagaka Gabriel. I also use the opportunity to welcome Kediah Malangfe, who is a political analyst and one of the communicators for the ruling party in Cameroon. Kediah Malangfe, thank you so much for coming to today's edition of the program.
Greetings to you, greetings to my co-panelists, greetings to the entire My Media Prime institution. We thank you people for giving us this opportunity to always come and express our view and educate the masses. Greetings to all those at home that have taken a seat in front of their flat screen to watch us as we analyze things, and I'm very happy also to get some of you your contribution. Greetings to all Africans at home and abroad.
Thank you, Kediah Malangfe, and here on my right is Isidor Teguia. Of course, he has been a contributor on 90 Minutes in Africa, especially in our WhatsApp group, very active there. And today he found time out of his very busy schedule to be part of the show. Welcome to the show, Isidor Teguia.
Thanks very much, Mr. BOH Elvis. This is my maiden participation in this wonderful program. I couldn't just make it the previous times because of the very busy schedule, as you earlier mentioned. But since these are holidays, I could find time to take part in this program of enlightenment, of mutual learning, of mutual enlightenment. I want to take this opportunity to greet the other panelists. I also want to take this opportunity to give you a great salute, Mr. BOH, for the wonderful job of enlightenment you've been doing through your program. It goes way beyond Cameroon, Africa, and the world. I consider this program as an opportunity to learn, let me confess that, but also to share my own perspective on the current issues that relate essentially to our continent. Thank you very much, Mr. BOH.
Thank you, Teguia Isidor. I use the opportunity to also welcome your very good friend, Teguia Isidor. You and him are always on two different sides of the coin. I'm talking about Elijah Enoaku, who is Senior Researcher on African Affairs in Leeds University. Elijah Enoaku, thank you so much for joining us today, sir.
Thanks for having me, Mr. BOH. Greetings to all my colleagues in studio, and greetings to all my friends in Uganda, Nigeria, Cote d'Ivoire, Morocco, those who are watching me from South Africa. I know lots of friends are watching from South Africa. Greetings from my friends in the United States, in Canada, in the UK, in Russia. To surprise, yes, we have lots of friends in Russia. And I hope that we'll be able to have a fair an educative discussion today. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Elijah. How do you feel today meeting your very good friend, Teguia Isidor, for the first time with whom you guys have always been debating, of course, fruitful exchange on the forum 90 Minutes in Africa?
Well, it might surprise some of you to know that I've spoken to Konam directly, one-on-one. We've chatted together. We do disagree on principle. I'm happy that he's come on the show today and we can have a concrete discussion and educate ourselves and the rest of Africans.
Thank you, Elijah Enoaku, and to all our viewers all over Africa. I must say that we have viewers all over Africa, Uganda, Kenya, based on the feedback we receive every day on as far as messages are concerned. We have lots of viewers across the continent who are very, very interested in what we do here on 90 Minutes in Africa and on my media prime, The African Eye. Please, you can watch us on Canal Sat channel 309. You can also watch us on the Swecom network. You can watch us on Amos 17 satellite, which of course reaches the hinterlands of Africa. And you can also watch us using so many other relay channels that relay our content both online and on satellite. And you can also join us using my Media Prime television on Facebook so that you can watch online. Make sure that you share to as many groups as possible to invite other people to watch. And also watch us on YouTube using BT Media Group. Share to as many groups as possible. Invite many people to watch, and also sending your own perspective to the discussion today. I want to say, also use the opportunity to thank Dr. John Ako, the man who doesn't speak with water in his mouth. That is the person, you know, every week I try to come up with topics. I want to say that Dr. John Ako is one who tried to coin this topic for me when I was struggling to come up with it. Dr. John Ako, thank you so much for joining 90 Minutes in Africa.
Yeah, well, it's a pleasure. Equally with the young gentlemen I'm meeting on the panel. It shows that we have a concern for Africa, and why not the world at large?
Thank you. Thank you, Doctor. I begin with you, Yagaka Gabriel. Why is Africa a strategic partner to the West and our Eastern partners?
Well, you may draw back from the colonial era to. It's not something we are still learning again to understand that the feeding. I mean, what they feed mostly from the African countries. May permit me not to cite the bauxite in the Guinea-Conakry and the timber in Cameroon and all the natural resources. One of the ways to ensure economic growth, economic maintenance in this former colonial masters, in quotes, who are still colonial masters in one way or the other, is to ensure that these things are not put into jeopardy. So this also comes now to reactivate the agenda of neocolonialism. When we talk about neocolonialism, it may just permit me to define exactly what we mean. It is actually a kind of a policy where we use economic imperialism, you use cultural imperialism, you use conditional aid and even globalization to still influence especially former colonies rather than the conventional method of force, which we may term in language in the terms of Zabanism. So it is just normal that France is interested in a country where they are gaining a lot, especially in our 14 former colonies in terms of the France CFA and other resources, being Mali and the other countries. And it's just normal for China, who is interested in the bauxite in Guinea-Conakry and all the rest. And this also comes to the concept of Francafrique. Are we really independent? That is the question. We can't because of these resources. So the mad rush is for so many reasons. Apart from the political reasons, it has the economic reasons, it has the social reasons, and that is why I think we're here with the panelists to find out exactly.
Thank you, Yagaka Gabriel. Isidor Teguia, how can we understand the fact that at the time when the French President Emmanuel Macron was touring Africa, he came to Cameroon, then from Cameroon he went to Benin and to Guinea-Bissau. The Russian Foreign Affairs Minister Lavrov was also touring Africa at the same time. The same day when Emmanuel Macron was in Cameroon, Sergei Lavrov was in Congo-Brazzaville, next door. How can we understand this offensive?
Well, Mr. Bo, you understand that there is right now a proxy war being waged in Ukraine. This war pits the West, led by America, and the East Bloc, led by Russia. We should not be fooled by the fact that the war is raging in Ukraine. Actually, it is a proxy war that is being waged. Americans want to continue to dominate the world, and they intended to use Ukraine as invite them into NATO to make them a member, and with the ultimate goal of weakening Russia. American officials have on several occasions stated very bluntly that the ultimate objective is to weaken the Russians. So, since these guys need support, at least moral support, even though we cannot give them the military might that we do not have, they need the moral support of the rest of the world. That's why we see this muffled battle going on between the representative of the West, that is Macron, President Macron, who has visited the former colonies, namely Cameroon and Benin, then Guinea-Bissau, that they co-opted into their franc zone. Sergei Lavrov also is taking advantage of the fact that right now the Eastern Bloc enjoys some degree of support from Africa to come and cement what they already have as support from the Russians, from the Africans, so that they will at least be able to win the war, the moral war that they are waging against the West.
Okay, thank you, Conan. Dr. Ako, John Ako, why is Africa's position on the war in Ukraine very important? Because we heard President Emmanuel Macron say that there's a lot of hypocrisy as far as Africa's position on the war in Ukraine is concerned. So why is Africa's position on the war in Ukraine important to the West?
Yeah, remember, there is no continent that has a very long, tight history towards the West like Africa. We will not get back to the Berlin Conference, passing to the First and the Second World War. We are not equally talking of the declaration of the United Nations, to which Africa remains the only continent whose birth certificate was declared by these institutions. And remember again, a lot of countries in Africa gained their independence by the visa of some Western nations, with what we call colonial agreements made post-independent Africa to be tight and cling to the Western philosophy and democracy. It is but normal that presently the world changes. In fact, we are saying that there is a new wind of change, that the Eastern Bloc has equally become very powerful. And the fact that the Eastern Bloc is getting very powerful, they too need their ally. And making ally in the new dispensation will mean creating new forum and equally using different approaches. You have seen the rise of the Chinese. We have seen the coming to consideration and acceptance of the Indians, looking at the present world changes. Equally, Africa has always been considered, for those who have read Western economic movement, Africa is always considered at the mercy of the world economics, which means at any time the world is in difficulties, Africa is the lone continent that can supply raw materials. Africa is the lone continent that can open air or space. You can imagine even in environmental changes, people have been told that the continent of Africa remains a receptacle, meaning there is the only continent that can purify the carbon dioxide and the poor oxygen that is emitted in the European nations, which means Africa has everything it takes for the West to clamor or to battle for. Presently, equally, we have seen that new spirit that Africa has started thinking that the West have fooled them a lot, or a lot of people from religious basis too, think that they have their own gods that was better than the gods of the West. Some people believe that the religion that we find in Africa was preached more by the West, and that a lot of money is still getting into this very domain. It equally thinks, people are thinking that we have built the Western economies than we have done to ourselves, and that the institutions that were open, the Bretton Woods institutions, we are talking of the IMF and the World Bank, remain the central instrument to lure Africans into high burden debts which can never be repaid. And when you look at that, we talk of presently debt forgiveness. Africans are thinking that it is time the West should forgive some of their debts. And when you are caught in the web of debt, you realize that you become a prisoner of conscience to this particular person that thinks he's helping you. And what we ask here, and what will give us the idea that the expression of recolonization, Africans should be very careful, because when you look at the streets of Ouagadougou, when you look at the streets in Senegal, when you feel what happened in Bangui, that youths brandish Russian flags instead of brandishing the African Union flag, there is still a call that the person we thought is getting vigilant is interest-seeking for a new master. And I tell people, does it mean that the fact that you seek for a new job, does that make you an entrepreneur? Do you become financially, economically, culturally, politically independent? A lot will believe that no matter the master we call, Africans therefore will still remain slaves. Africans therefore will still remain servant to another person. It is hypocrisy by the West, because what we think the Africans who have gone through a lot of hurdles of wars, intimidation, killing and assassination, human rights, slavery treatment, today support a war in another end. At the height of the same crisis, some Africans signed heavy and huge economic and security agreement, defense agreement with the Russians, thinking that the Russians will come to protect them. It creates another form of controversy. Are Africans not really hypocrites? For yesterday you received somewhere, and today you think there is a new leader that you think you can lure them to bring you more of the aids. And I said, if Russians, if the Chinese, if the Indians are coming to Africa, we should have in our mind that they are not coming for our interests. All these nations have needs back home. They need raw materials, they need a settled population, they need the market. And a lot of it, they are there for their interests, and there is nothing they propose to you. Thinking that the hypocrisy we have, I cannot and in no way support the Russian war in Ukraine, but I cannot equally say Africans are not free to make new friends.
Thank you, Dr. Ako. John Ako, I get to you now. You want to say something?
Yes, I just wanted to ask Dr. Ako that you've evoked a lot of items that fall in the aspects of neocolonialism, especially the conditional aid that you just came up with and the cultural imperialism. Now, when you come again in your conclusion to say that you think that they can actually do it, I mean, liberate themselves or some sort of emancipation, isn't it some sort of controversy that the same people who are entangled in the shackles of aid, those foreign debts, the same people who are entangled in the shackles of all the sorts of imperialism and globalization that we've cited, are now looking for a better master than the one that was there? Isn't it a controversy? Can they really, can they really alleviate from themselves this kind of predicaments? Because I find a lot of controversy in that.
There is, okay, anyway, it is within joint international strategy that the world is always in need of partners, no matter the region in which you are. Africans can do it by what we call the South-South cooperation. The South-South cooperation means that Africans can do it within themselves. If Nigeria is powerful in a domain, why not get into a convention? Remember that the calls we receive in Africa today was a fight of the African SATCOM. SATCOM was led by Muammar Gaddafi, Algeria and Nigeria. And calls were made at 500 francs a minute. Today, where do we have? The burden of money we paid at the International Communication Agency, over 500 billion every year, now remains in African coffers. A call now is at almost 50 francs. A South-South agreement in domains where we are powerful will assist the continent of Africa and get up to another new age where the domain we are not powerful. Remember what the Chinese did. Nobody will tell you that China sent a lot of students in America. China was not colonized by America. These students were on scholarship. They studied and then brought back their knowledge, meaning there's a need for technology transfer. So I think there are mechanisms that we can detach ourselves from it without really using brutality or going open declarations.
Dr. Ako, John Ako, I'll get back to you, Yagaka Gabriel. Let me get to Kediah Malangfe. Kediah Malangfe, I want you to talk about how can Africa position itself to gain from this tussle between the West and the East. How can we position ourselves to benefit from this tussle?
We have two ways to go about it. Firstly, Africans need to live from that myopic mindset or low self-esteem to believe that they cannot go into accord and agreement for 50-50. That is what we are decrying. Africans should have that mentality that if, for instance, you saw when Gbagbo was complaining about France, he simply said it. They go on an agreement and Ivory Coast have less than 10% and France has more than 80% of their cocoa.
It just happened last 2 weeks, eh?
Yes, that's the problem.
Ghana, Ivory Coast, maybe if you are not aware, I'm not interrupting, but to bolster that fact, that 1,000 million US dollars was to be paid in both coffers of Ivory Coast and Ghana. Ghana received its money in full, 500, and Ivory Coast, because it passed through the French treasury. What happened? Not up to 2/3 of that amount finally arrived at the treasury of the Ivorian leadership. Just tell you the arguments we have had.
So that goes now with the accord, which there are many tolls of those accords, which these Western powers they use actually to exploit the African continent. And the second aspect, which I think we should inculcate to be able to live out of this, has to go with the issue of international trade within the African continent, which Doctor was explaining. Let me go into detail into it. If you realize that, for instance, we are suffering about wheat in Cameroon because Ukraine and Russia, they have war. Why not countries that are good in wheat produce better of the wheat? And those that are not good, okay, for instance, in Cameroon, if Cameroon is doing good in market gardening crops, which we see it in Fumbot and the rest, Boya, that is being exported to Guinea Equatorial and Nigeria or Gabon. Why should Gabonese also not invest also in what they know how to produce best, to also export it to Cameroon and others? So if we can engage in this, that you produce what you know how to produce best and export it to the other African countries, they will no longer depend in the Western world. So those are the two aspects that I believe that if the African continent engage in that, will definitely stop this aspect of dependency. For instance, we have oil. Everybody knows that the Gulf of Guinea is the richest place in the world today. But you still imagine that countries in the Gulf of Guinea that have oil still import it in other African countries, where they have the oil naturally that they can invest in it and able to produce it. And to go with...
So that we move to Enoaku.
Yes,
okay.
To come on, the other spoke for more than 10 minutes.
Okay, no, just take the mic for
do you think if you have something better on to say, you can give
take the mic for just 4 minutes or 3 minutes so that everyone, you know, we
and to go further, you talked about France, the coming of French president and the other ones. You see, these people are thieves. They come in Africa to exploit, to steal. I even saw on social media where a young student wrote that why did the French president come to Africa or Cameroon in the middle of the night? And another one replied to him that what was said in the Bible, that who are those that come in the middle of the night? So you definitely know that the ability of the awareness among the Africans has really risen up, where the Africans need to fight among them. And to be very, very clear, we are not saying that African countries are rushing to Russia for colonization. No. We are saying that Russia is the better country when it comes to agreement. If, for instance, our oil we had in Cameroon, the exploitation, Cameroon had about 85% was taken away from Cameroon, and we had 15%. Russia is coming in, and we are now having about 35%, and the rest 30% being at the level of exploitation. So when you look at this aspect, you know that Russia is the better partner than for us to remain, yes, the better devil, than for us to remain with France with a 1959 accord that says that all natural resources beneath the soil, over 15 meters beneath the soil, should be exploited by France. That all contracts in French African country, that is more than 20 billion, should be done by France. That is why, if most of you didn't take note, you realize that the bridge in the Wuri was supposed to be constructed by the Chinese people. But with that accord, it could not be given to the Chinese people where they already started work. They had to give it back to France, and France had to give it back to the Chinese people and exploit a huge chunk of money. And thank God that accord was not renewed in Cameroon. Those are the aspects that we appreciate, and we accept Russia to be the better devil.
Thank you, Kediah. Let's not marginalize. Let us not marginalize Elijah Enoaku, who is also one of our panelists joining us from Leeds University. Before I do that, I use the opportunity to greet some of the fervent lovers of 90 Minutes in Africa, I want to say hi to Ndumi Mawa, Mr. Slow and Steady Facts, who is the Secretary General of the New Era Youth of Africa, who is watching us right now in the hometown of my hometown of Jinikom, alongside the fan club of 90 Minutes in Africa in Bochai. I want to say hi to all of you who are watching. Greetings to you, Dr. Nze Fulangenge, who is the chairman of the African Diamond Council, watching us right now from Uganda. Thank you. Sorry. Elijah Enoaku, I get to you now. Let's take this tweet from Yoweri Museveni. He said, "The people of Uganda and myself welcome His Excellency Sergei Lavrov, Russia's Foreign Affairs Minister, who Russia has been supporting the anti-colonial African movement for the past 100 years, and I commend their long-standing relationship with Uganda." Your reaction, please.
Well, before my
sorry,
reaction,
sorry, I caught a little flu.
It's kind of
for the show.
No, that's fine. First of all, let's put this in perspective, gentlemen, and the rest of the world watching us. We are talking about the scramble for Africa, and let us understand the position of Africa. Africa is coming into this from a position of pain. Africa is like that woman who has been in an abusive relationship for a very long time. And suddenly he's gotten a way out, out of that relationship. And immediately any Tom, Dick, and Harry shows up, she wants to fall into the hands of that Tom and Dick and Harry without re-examining what caused her to go into that abusive relationship. That is the situation of Africa right now. Africa is like that guy who is drowning in a sea of water and sees a python, and he thinks that the python is his only hope to get out of that water, and he grabs on that python. So let us understand, Africa is trying to process pain from colonization, pain from years of maltreatment, pains of years of new colonization. And sometimes when you process pain and you're not careful, you get back into the same pain where you found yourself. And that is my fear with Africa right now. Yes, we want negotiation with parties that are welcoming to the African continent. Russia is welcome to the table. No doubt about that. China is welcome to the table. But is Africa ready to go in and negotiate as equal partners, or they are ready to let their pain take a better head of their thinking? No strategic thinking in some of these alliances. If you look at what Africa is going in for, whether you talk about Russia or whichever power, or China or the East, you look at some of the engagement and the accord they are signing, you see a man that is trying to run away from a great snake into the hands of python. That's exactly what's happening in the African continent right now. When you listen to Yoweri Museveni and what he was saying, hey, Russia, welcome to Africa. We've suffered a lot in the hands of these colonialists. We are ready to welcome with open arms. It doesn't matter what the accord is. And that is the result of what we are seeing. The entrenchment of Russia in Africa is not even to the benefit of Russia. Who are those who are benefiting? China. It is not Russia. Pay attention to the accords that are signed. Pay attention to what is going on so that you understand the demise of Africa today. Instead of going into partnerships that are going to benefit Africa, what is the East doing? The East, one party is signing military accords, the other party is going to economic accords. And economic accords, what are the economic accords we're talking about? We are talking about accords like the one we saw in Uganda, where there was signed an accord for the construction of the airport, and the terms of that accord says that they ever miss a payment, the owner of the Uganda is going to be seized. That is the Museveni we're talking about. He signed an accord with China, and as we speak, the Exim Bank of China is total control of the known international airport in that country. And that is the people that we are talking about today. And those are the kind of accords we are talking about today. Ladies and gentlemen, and Africa as a whole, those that are listening to me from all over Africa, Africa is at the place where they are about to surrender their sovereignty to a different bloc. As I call it, you are going from frying pan fire. If you look at the accords that are signed, we are talking about international property rights. We are talking about economy. Look at what China is doing in Africa today as we speak. When China signs an accord, China will come in with spoons, knives, cooks, sweepers, cleaners, every single thing that goes into what China is doing in Africa is imported and brought from China. There is no transfer of technology. There is no transfer, trickle effect to the local economy. There's no transfer to the people who are supposed to benefit from there. Everything goes back to China. Ask yourself the question, are we not back to colonization 2.0? Africa, open your eyes. Just your pain of colonization seems to be blinding us to reality. And if care is not taken, I say it again, if care is not taken, we will go back, we'll go from A as the slave master, B as the colonial master. And that is the risk that Africa is taking right now.
Thank you, Elijah Enoaku. Maybe I tell our producer, Eli Nolinga, to also project this other tweet from Yoweri Museveni, still after receiving Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. He also said, how can we automatically be against those who have been with us for the last 100 years? We have forgiven those who did bad things to us, and we are working with them. How about those who have never harmed us? So I get to you now, Konam. We've spoken about France. We don't want France. Secondly, we don't want Russia. We don't want China. At the end of the day, who is the better devil for Africa in terms of bilateral relations?
Well, I think we have a problem. We have a problem in the sense that we seem not to understand that we live in a world where we must, whether we like it or not, relate with other nations, trade with them. And for us to relate with other nations, we must understand the psyche of other nations. We must understand the driving force behind international relations. It is about interest. Whether the Americans, the Chinese, the Russians, even our Nigerian brothers, when they come into any relationship with us, they have behind their mind, the back of their mind, is how much can I make out of this relationship with X or Y? There is no saint as far as international relations are concerned. It is always about the maximization of profit. Interest, interest, interest. There is therefore the need for us Africans to have a mind switch. We must also learn the intricacies of international relations. We must also understand that if we must find our own place in the concept of nations, we must learn how to fight for our own interest, how to gun for our own interest. Nobody, no nation, whether America, whether Russia, China, or any other, will fight for us. They will always come for their own interest. Now, take what President Museveni, the declaration he made. It's such a pity. Why do I say so? Because President Museveni seems not to understand that the Russians who have come are not saints. They don't come to Africa because they like Africa, they love Africa. By the way, when it comes to international relations, words such as love, like, they are anathema. You don't use them. The Russians are coming to avail themselves of the opportunities that they will find here to grow their economy. They are coming here for their companies. They are coming here for the markets. That is something we need to understand. Now, the luck we have right now is that these nations are fighting over us. We need now to take this opportunity to make the maximum out of the fact that they are now coveting our resources. Somebody made mention of the fact that when you take a country such as France, what they do in their former colonies, which they called precary, is that they will unilaterally define the terms of trade with those colonies, impose whatsoever agreements on them, and they'll have no option. But today we have the golden opportunity, since the Russians are coming in, the Americans are coming in, the Chinese are already there, many other nations are coming to covet our resources. What do we simply do? We tell them, okay, since you are so many coveting this, we will go for the best who offer us the best conditions. But unfortunately, at the helm of some African states, and I suspect it's the same thing everywhere else, people seem not to have understood this intricacy, and it's really a pity.
Thank you, Isidor Teguia. I come to you now. It's your time now to speak. Yagaka, I see you taking down lots of notes. Yes. Do you think that the leaders at the helm of the state in Africa really represent the thoughts that have been articulated by Isidor Teguia, that is defending the interests of Africa? I'm sure you followed very keenly the visit of the French president and the visit of the Russian foreign affairs minister. Did you see our African leaders, from the actions and from their speeches, standing up for Africa to defend the African continent and the interests of its people?
Well, it may need some other type of diagnostic tools to be able to get a deeper impression of these things. But your question just came as if you saw exactly what I was trying to jot down in a couple of conversations that has gone in. And I would really like to answer that question by addressing the feasibility studies of the wonderful policies and ideas that there's so many African scholars, like the people who are here and the others, have proposed over time. Because it doesn't always seem to be theory, it doesn't always seem to be proposing, it doesn't seem to say what has to be done. We have to get into the practicality of stuff. And to that effect, I don't want to take credit where it's not my due. Maybe some later on I'll invite some people to read this article, The Challenges of Regional Integration in Africa by Bobo. He published that article in 2007. So when we get now into the issue, we talk about feasibility studies. There is first of all a problem about the unanimity in the African, emancipation. Notice that we are talking about different colonial masters here. We're talking about different mad rush here. It's not France we're talking about for all the African countries. It's not Russia we're talking about. We're talking about different African countries. So first, there's what we call the heterogeneity at the level of colonial impact on the different African nations. So that is the first major challenge. How do these countries come into a cohesion, into a fusion with this different colonial impact that we may just be analphabets at the level of its implications? That is the first thing. Now, is it like there has never been an attempt before to implement these great ideas? No, there has been. That is why you will start with the history of the plethora of policies and grand visions. You had the Lagos Plan of Actions, that was in the year 2000 that came in, which aimed at bringing up what we call the unified African market to ease quite a number of stuff: stabilization of tariffs, integration and harmonization of sectors, implementation and creation of new economic policies, free trade, free custom union. But we have just a couple of files that tells us much about the fiasco that it ended into. So what was the problem? That is the question, so that we can revise. Because there's a statement that politicians used to say that a history that we do not learn from is bound to repeat itself. Now, when you go now to the different mechanisms that are in place, the issue is what I would like us to change our narrative. What are those challenges, those obstacles, those impediments that has made in such a way that up to today we have not achieved projects that were envisaged like the United States of Africa? Because all we're talking about is the regional integration of the African countries. You're talking about them coming together to fight exactly the consequences of these issues. And that's why I'm saying that let's not just be erroneous in our analysis by saying that the African head of states have not done anything. I think that in the archives of the developments that has come up, there are quite a number of things that have come up that came up with their own challenges, and the question then is, what then is the way forward? I think this is where scholars are supposed to help more in a very pragmatic sense. We will talk about, because there are theories that remain in the circle of theories, and we have pragmatism, which is different. This is at the level where we can contribute most. We look at the France CFA, for example, which has been a very big tussle in the economic circle. People especially the 14 former African colonies, fighting against, the effects of the France CFA and trying to change it. But then again, it also came with its own numerous challenges and failures. What were those issues? So if we're talking about the mad rush for Africa, we should also forget that France on its own side with its colonies, Russia on its own side with its new adventures in Africa, and then the other countries like UK who are silent, we call them the silent killers. Those kind of people are all working in unison together when it comes to sharing the national cake. Because these are the issues that we talk. When you come to the cake of the other person, nobody comes in at that level. So is it really that these African countries are not doing what they're supposed to do, or that their Pan-African agenda is plagued by a plethora of impediments? That is the question now. Is it?
Thank you, Yagaka Gabriel. I get to you now, Kediah Malangfe, before we get to Dr. Enoaku. Of course, in the background, before the arrival of the French president, when you listen to the media, you must have noticed there have been lots of complaints about the France CFA. Many people thinking that it doesn't make sense for African states that were under France to be decolonized, and at the same time they are using a currency from France. But that at the end of the day, when the French president comes to Africa, it's as if everyone gets into his shell. No one wants to talk about the France CFA. What explains this hypocrisy about the France CFA from our African leaders?
I will not see it as a hypocrisy, because there's a lot of mafia in it. To march away from France to say you want to create your own currency, how valuable would that your currency be? We saw people like Robert Mugabe that decided to create their own currency, and the white used their international mafia, which they call FME, to make that currency to have little or no value. When we talk about colonialism, the tools are there. When we talk about Francophonie, we talk about Commonwealth, we also talk about FME. If Kuwait dinar is the highest currency in the world, and they'll tell you that to have the value of a currency, you will have to talk about the level of production, their importation and exportation. If your exportation is more than your importation, it shows that your currency is supposed to have high value. And now I ask you, what does Kuwait produce that is more than the entire Europe, that their currency is more than the euro? What do they produce that is more than the entire America, that their currency is more than the dollars? When you go into that, you will still end up to understand that there is a lot of mafia in all these things, which when we are saying that we should move away from the currency, we should also know what we are supposed to face and what we are supposed to fight. I also want to make this clear. I am not among those, and I don't think there is anybody in this platform that will say France is a bad country. We are not saying they are a bad country. We are simply complaining about our trade, our accord with them, that they are not being balanced. We recognize them. They are colonial master, they are ex-colonial master, and the umbilical cord will always be there. It's not a problem. The umbilical cord on that exists between Britain and America is still there. America was colonized by Britain, and they are still there. If you want to take note at the level of the UN Security Council, anything that Britain asks for, America will definitely support them. Because they are a colonial master, that agreement is there. But it does not mean that our own France should exploit African countries. No, Britain is not exploiting America. They live as bilateral agreement are balanced. If France if America is not okay with it, he tells Britain, I am not. But the case we have here in Africa is totally different, especially in the French African country is different. Where the struggle for independence, the harshness of for independence, you saw that it was very, very demonic at the level of Algeria and France. But at the level of French African country in sub-Saharan Africa, The excitement of getting independent made them to accept many accords that are barbaric. That is what we are talking about, which we are denouncing. That we are ready to continue with them, but it should be at a bilateral level. Dr. Ako was simply talking about the fact that when we have trade with this foreign country, our foreign reserve remain in their country. That's just an aspect of the franc CFA, which he made an example between Ghana and Ivory Coast, and the amount that foreign reserve that remain in that country. Even out of that fact that our reserves still remain in that country, you still go again about the production of the currency itself. We lost a lot of money just because this foreign country is the one producing our currency. Do you know how much we spend for a single note of 1,000 francs for it to be produced? Those are the questions that the African people don't ask themselves. And when you have even trade with, if Cameroon want to buy from Nigeria, for instance, per se the way the franc CFA work, it's not even at the level of the World Bank. It's like we are a credit union under France, and France account is in the World Bank, meaning that if you want to buy something from Nigeria, Nigeria cannot pay in our account because we don't have an account. They need to pay in the account of France, and France will give it to us. That is how the situation is, and that is why the people are saying that it is barbaric. For our viewers that are looking at us, the example is very clear. Let me make it this way so that our viewers can understand. You ask a friend to assist you with 5,000, and he said yes, he wants to give you that 5,000. You don't have a mobile money account. You go and meet your brother that, please, can he send the 5,000 through your mobile money account? And that brother say yes. And when he comes, he say, this is my percentage that I will remove. This is my own for using my account. That is what the franc CFA is, and that is why we are decrying. We are not saying that is very bad. We just want to have a 50-50. We just want to have a say in our court. They should not use us and make us to fight among ourselves like they did in Ivory Coast, to make Bagbo Ouattara to be fighting among themselves, and they are exploiting. That is what we don't want. And that is why we are saying that if the accord is 50-50, no problem, we will accept it. But when it's already exploitative, that is why we say no to this country. To conclude, I say Russia is better at the level of this 50-50 agreement, even when it is not like 50-50, but their proposals are better off than that of France.
Dr. Ako Janako, time for you now to speak. We saw the meeting between French President Emmanuel Macron and his counterpart Paul Biya of Cameroon, of course, before he moved to Benin. And during the discussion whereby the French journalist grilled Paul Biya about his stay in power, President Paul Biya said that he's going to answer that question when his mandate comes to an end, and he's going to tell them whether he's going to continue or probably return to the village. And shortly after that incident, we started seeing information coming in from the diplomatic cables, especially www.africaintelligence.com, where we were getting news that the French ambassador to Cameroon was likely supposed to be replaced with a 4-star general. So what does that? You can react to that after, no problem. So I want to know from you, Dr. Ako, what is the geostrategic importance of this announcement coming in? How can we analyze or decode this kind of announcement coming in, which says that the French ambassador to Cameroon, according to AfricaIntelligence.com, was supposed to be replaced by a 4-star general at the time when the Russian foreign affairs minister was in nearby Congo?
It is just, I believe, it remains media information until it is realized. We consider that it is secret information, and at times, Cameroon too, you know, we are living with a lot of hooligans, and I call some people that are appropriated power in Yaoundé. At any time you mention change in Yaoundé, there is that fright that maybe we are going to give up something. And I'm telling you that nominating or appointing who by any other state to represent in their embassies or consular missions abroad is the will of that nation. Except you have a mind that let you know. In fact, I used to tell my students that except you are a demon, then can you be located by the movement of the Holy Ghost. So you see, arrest the demons and the demons start speaking in tongues. So that is just what is happening here, which means that the moment some of those Cameroonians who are thinking that they have evil in their hands and that very soon Russians are coming on that side, and now France is changing a civilian into a military ambassador, who says they have never been military agents. In all world policies, in all developed and advanced nations, except in Africa, all civilians, most of them have received military training. A lot of them are military intelligence before even becoming president. If you are aware, you will need to know of the example of somebody like Boris Johnson. Nobody could ever tell you that Boris Johnson has been a security agent for Russians. And that is just what it is. But when it came to his nation, he has to be the one again that hit Russia more than any other person in Europe. That means there should be no coalition between his nation and him working with Russia at that time. So if the same general who is working under the French authority is now sending Yaoundé to maintain the activities of the French, who am I to say he's not going to be here? Remember the other time too, we have somebody that was appointed to come to Yaoundé who was a homosexual, somebody who considered as a lesbian or whatsoever, that was going to head the UN, the US embassy in Yaoundé, with a lot of talks and talking at the right. If it is the US people will, it will pass as such. Nobody controls anybody wheresoever he walks. One of the things which we have to know here, when you see the controversy in Africa today, you realize that we are talking of this old outdated, obsolete brain, lifetime leaderships. So imagine that Laroff was in Uganda. Imagine Laroff was in Guinea, Congo. In Congo, he was talking with Denis Sassou Nguesso. He went to Uganda to talk with Museveni. We were thinking that the same discussion would have might be been with the president of Zambia. It would have been the same type of talk with the leader in Tanzania. What is the problem with these old people who are failing to give up power? One of the things we have noticed that the fear and the scramble for Africa has been more even making too strong by this old leadership getting into personal agreement and amassing personal wealth for themselves and their family. We are saying so too, with the agreement of what? Change and replacement of who takes over power after such leadership. A lot of people will tell you that on the eve, before President Emmanuel Macron came to Cameroon, it has been ideal that Emmanuel of Cameroon Frambia was going to take over the Republic of Cameroon, and that such information was not given to Cameroon. When we publish images of the presidential visit, a lot of people failed to show images of what happened, whether he even met with the family. And now some were equally happy that some people went there, their cameras too were moving everywhere, and brought us a lot of those images of such meetings again. Should we equally be accepted and at the same time rejected? Because some Cameroonians are happy that Frambia will take over. The people who brandish the banners and whatsoever are Cameroonians. And it means somewhere that Africans at one point, some of us who are reasoning and thinking, do we really know what we want? What does Africa want? When you condemn somewhere and then you accept in another domain. Within 2014 up to today, Russia's highest interest in Africa is military. They have signed 19 different military agreements. Doesn't mean that Africa will only be strong with Russia in terms of military. We are thinking that economically we should be seeing that getting to China and India, Brazil, and all the like, South Africa, what economic profit are Africans going to take over? So getting into a lot of this, who brings what to Africa? And I'm saying that Africa is going to act in a more serious position, because Museveni at his age cannot talk anything to Laroff. So I call such meetings protocol unions, protocol meetings. When you put any leadership presently in Africa to discuss with whosoever from China or Europe, you just get the agreement. China was proposing to build the seaport in Dar es Salaam in Tanzania, and that he was going to manage that airport for the next 100 years before giving back to Tanzania. But God help us with a vibrant, more wise enough, a gang of knowledge, John Pombe Magufuli, he refused such an agreement. A lot have accepted, like we are talking now in Uganda. The new generation of Africa that are going to come 50 years after, what are they going to feel? These were the same agreement we signed 100 years ago, and today we are crying out of them. And we are saying, Africa as it is, we have the power to dictate who manage what and who manage where. The South Africans will tell you that they cannot condemn the killing in Ukraine because Russia fought with them. And the question we still ask, are they still free today? Are South Africans free today? If they are free, what we see as xenophobic attack against other Africans wouldn't have been happening. South Africa was supposed to be a model in Africa. But today you realize that they may equally be getting into the same colonial tendency. A lot people maybe are not aware that South Africa, you see, equally colonized some territories in Africa. You will never do anything in the Gambia. You will never do anything in Botswana. You will not exercise any power in Namibia without South Africa telling you what to do. South Africa still dictates the policies and politics in Zimbabwe. A lot of people will not tell you this. And people will tell you about how evil the French are. Nobody will tell you that some African nations too behave in the same manner like our colonial master. So there are a lot of things. I'm just saying here that at times information and knowledge is what keeping the African continent dark. And so you find Western books titled The Dark Continent. And the Dark Continent, people were thinking was that there was no light in Africa. The issue is that when you are dark in your brain. And when your brain is not informed, imagine what can happen to you. So even your neighbor who has light can give you order and you will respect him.
Thank you, Dr. Akojonako. Thank you so much. I remember sometimes when there were some people who were the only ones who had radios in their villages, and sometimes they will have to listen to the news and come and tell you what the news is saying. And at the end of the day, if the news they hear does not favor them, they'll just tell you another story. And you just have to believe since you don't have a radio set. Good. Let's get over to Leeds University and join Elijah Enoaku. Elijah, I think you want to react to some of the points that have been raised by your colleagues here in the studio.
Yeah, first and foremost, I just want to answer a question that Kediah asked, that why is Kuwait's currency that high? Well, it's because of goods and services. The countries that buy oil from Kuwait, they want to buy in Kuwait dollar. So that makes the currency very high. And the Kuwait sector is well developed and the service industry is well developed. That's what makes that currency high the way it is. But I want to go back to the point we're talking about Russia here, because we have this newfound love with Russia. Africa has the newfound love with Russia. No problem about that. But let us look at this critically, ladies and gentlemen all over Africa listening to this. You know your friends in times of difficulties. That's where you know your friends. Let's examine a few Russian interventions in Africa, because everybody is now chanting Mali, 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 Mali. Yeah, good and fine. We know what France, the evil power, is doing in Mali, and Russia, what Russia is trying to do. But let's examine a few things, because they say the taste of the pudi is in the eating. Action speaks louder than words. Let's look at a few countries where Russia is currently operating in Africa and see what they are doing to give us a taste of what Russia will do if they have their way in Africa. Dr. Ako already mentioned a few of them and talk about, military cooperation. That is the expertise of Russia. If you look at this accord that Russia is signing, tell me one or two or three principal economic accord that Russia is signing with African countries. Africa's thing. Tell me. You're not going to find them. But what do we find? Russia in Sudan. When the Sudanese people rose up against Omar Bashir, and there was this pro-democracy group that came in, they toppled that guy. When they toppled that guy, what happened? There is this military man that took over, and Russia came in and is now supporting. Why did Russia wait for pro-democracy group to come up, topple a dictator, and then another dictator come and then Russia is supporting? Number two, Russia has been a close friend of Mohammed Gaddafi. They have been close friends for a very long time. Where was Russia when NATO invaded Gaddafi? Why did Russia not bring its military might and its artillery to withstand NATO from invading Russia? But what is happening in Libya today? Al-Qaddafi, the rebel leader that is now controlling all the oil wells, Russia has gone in to sign a accord with that rebel leader. Where was Russia? In Cameroon. Some of these Western nations that we condemn as devils brought up Cameroon to be discussed in the United Nations Security Council. Who vetoed it? Answer the question. Who vetoed it? Russia. Is that against the interests of Cameroon or for the interests of Cameroon? Let's think. Let's think. Because these things, sometimes we just say it, oh yeah, Russia, Russia, Russia. But we look at where Russia is operating, look at their policies, look at what they're currently doing. It will tell us if they come to Africa, what will be their interest. Russia is operating a policy that we call arms for security. Russia is not interested. Let me give you another example. Russia produces close to 30% of the wheat in the whole world. And Africa has more than 40% of arable land. If you tell Russia today that Africa is going to start subsidizing heavily the agricultural sector in order to compete with Russian wheat, I'm telling you that Russia is going to fight you. I am telling you that Russia is going to fight you. So let nobody be deceived and say, oh, we have this newfound love with Russia, or Russia is doing this, Russia is doing that. Russia is there for their interests. And whatever accord they're signing, they want to build Africa to their benefit. And again, ask that question. Why is Russia going signing military accord with all these old 80 years people who want to remain in power forever? Do you think that Russia is there for the interest of the common man who's suffering in the streets? Think twice.
Okay, I want you to react. Elijah.
I want to
Yes.
Come in to say that this is another laboratory you've dropped us in, which may need some kind of utensils that we do not have at our disposal. But I don't want to think that it's only a military intervention. But I want to say that in a partnership, in a win-win procedure, you are interested in what you want, and I'm interested in what I want. One of the ways, one of those instruments that African nations really need if they must achieve their emancipation one day is that they have some super military power to be able to resist what we call wars, to be able to resist the effects of wars. I'm not going to teach anybody about the jihadist incursion that has been put in the Sahel region since 2002. If you have colonial masters like France, in the case study of Cameroon, and then you don't yet have a way of riposting, you don't have underground methods to be able to, because one of the major ways in which a big country is down is what we call political instability, cause wars, cause civil unrest, to be able to crumble the economy and to regain back the colonial agenda. Now, if you look at Cameroon in that sense, like their cooperation with the Israelites to form the Battalion Intervention Rapid, or you see, for example, their coalition with Russia in order to reinforce some offshore means in terms of military cooperations, facing now the real devil, because now there are two devils. One is offering you a gun that you can use to kill the other one. Do you say that this kind of cooperation is not a good cooperation? Because if you look at Russia in terms of cooperation with the military, I don't want to enter into the intricacies as the others are saying, to be able to look into, they call it the nitty-gritties of the matter. But when you come back into it, if you have two devils, one is offering you a gun that you can use to kill the bigger devil, what do? So before we begin to castigate all the Russian different ways of operating, I think the whole theory is about looking for the better devil.
Thank you, Yagaka Teguia. What can we benefit from Russia? Based on Elijah Enoaku's presentation, it shows that we should be very careful with Russia's charm offensive towards Africa.
Yeah, let me correct you there, Mr. Bo. We should not only be weary of the Russians, we should be weary of just any partner who comes to us. We should scrutinize them. Whether the Chinese, whether the Russians, whether the Americans, as I earlier said, there is no sin when it comes to international relations. Let us have that mindset that they are coming for their own interest. If we have that mindset, then we'll know where our interest lies and then know the kind of partner to choose that will help us better achieve the maximum of our interest.
So what can we benefit from Russia specifically?
Yeah. What used to obtain is that France, quite unfortunately, as our colonial master, used to dictate just everything on us. We had no choice because we don't have the military might to retaliate, quite unfortunately. But this is the golden opportunity. The Russians are coming as a counterfoe to the French. The Chinese are there. The Americans are there. The English are there, and many other nations. It is up to us to mobilize our resources, intellectual resources, economic resources. Let our experts enlighten us on the best options possible in the array that is now present before us. Let us not have any negative or positive bias before. Dr. John earlier told us that even the South Africans, remember that South Africa used to occupy Namibia. And in Namibia, they did exactly what we are reproaching these other nations. What is therefore the logical conclusion from this? It is that there is no saint, there is no devil in international relations.
So, because we are drowning, we can hang on to any snake to survive. Russia should be like the snake that we can hang on from the sea if
no, not
we
the
are
Russians.
drowning.
It would be a fatal mistake for us to think, as President Museveni, unfortunately, quite unfortunately, declared that the Russians are coming to rescue us. No, I don't believe that. We need the Russians to come in. But let us not send away the others. Let the others also stay so that there is no permanent friend in international relations. Always keep this. Yeah. Permanent interest, no permanent friend. It therefore means that in a given field, maybe military field, we may see that the Russians are the best. We go for them. We examine the economic aspects of what the others are proposing. Maybe the Americans are best. We go for the Americans. So we should be the ones now to choose. They used to impose on us. This is the golden opportunity for us now to impose on them, to choose the better option. Let us not send away one and then become now slaves to the others. Because what will ultimately happen now is that we'll simply have switched slave masters. We will still be in the quagmire.
Thank you. I just wanted to add something, maybe to cement what we're saying and what even Elijah said. When you find leaderships like that in Congo, you find leadership like that in Uganda, people who have taken over a country hostage for close to 40 or 4 decades, making such declaration. You even ask if such declarations are even made for the interest of the people or to let the new partner they think they need to make new agreements and new funding to come in. So they keep on amassing for their families. There is one thing which we said here, everybody needs new friends. Everybody considering us. You will remember that in a local African meaning, they say, he who has friends have wealth. And so meaning when you define some relationship with some of your friends, your position too is better off. But when you have a leadership, like the one we have in some post-independent African countries, where people believe that after me should be my son, after me should be my brother, after me should be my sister, you can realize why we move on the same cycle. And those agreements, some are made even within occultic cycles. People have gone into occultic cycles, which headquarter is found in France. That occultic cycle, which headquarter is found in Netherlands. The other occultic cycles, the headquarter is found in Japan. Such group of people will never defy anybody giving order from the headquarters in Japan. And meaning, until we relocate them, until the nation push them out, we will not uncage ourselves from this mental slavery. And so what we may need, like I have said several times, Africans need what we call mental revolution and believing in themselves. No nation, I have not seen where Africans said we will do it. Africans are believing that Russia will do it for them. Africans believe that China will do it for them. Meaning for you to eat rice, for you to eat common tomato, China should come and farm tomato and then we buy in the market. This is what we're saying. It is shameful. Africans are unable to stand on top of the table of civilized nations and take their own destiny. People have money in bank accounts that even outweigh the state budget. And we are complaining about Russia. I believe after all this, the next struggle will be for us to unchain ourselves from our own very slavery. We are enslaved in our own nations. And we stop even looking at this Western or Eastern policy. If not of egoistic and self-centered tendency, Africa was a blessed continent. And I don't take it off. Americans and Europeans know that the African continent is made at the mercy of world economics. And you will see it happening. They will come to use Africa to correct their economies. Africans are unable to use themselves to correct their economies. Imagine that. There is a mental problem which Africans must live up to it.
Kediah Malangfe, should we not be scared that this new charm offensive could lead to the fresh destabilization of our continent, maybe through wars and other things that could come up?
What matters to me is when a bilateral accord is signed between any country, 50-50, and the interest of Cameroon is protected, fine and good. If we can sign the same accord with Russia or without Russia, with an African country, but when our interest is there, it is good. You see, we are analysts and we have that ability to influence our viewers to think the way they think. That is why one of us will only come out to give aspect where Russia came in Africa and did things that are barbaric. But he will not tell you that when young Akansh Kwadira won election and was made president in Central African Republic, and the old, as he claimed, the old Francois Bozizi wanted to remove Theodore Akansh Kwadira. Who helped Theodore? Was it not Russia to fight against Francois Bozizi, an old dictator, as he is saying? Why should he only bring the other examples that are against Russia and does not bring the one we all know? Is Akansh Kwadira not a young man that just got his PhD from Yaoundé? Is he not young? So those are the aspects. However, I am not here to portray a country to be better off than another. One matter is that the agreement, the accord should be 50-50. I don't care who it comes from. As far as the interest of our country is there, it is okay. But what I want to let Africans be assured is that most of the accord signed with Russia is above 35%. Now, if you want to even go into detail to talk about this very aspect, you realize that the accord that France has with English-speaking African country is bilateral, is 50-50. I hope we know that Nigeria has many business accords with France than even French African countries. Are we aware? But it is okay with Nigeria because it is 50-50. But when they come to their own colonial country, it is not 50-50. Meaning that they are aware of what they are doing. Why should we then not accept he who is better? That is the problem. When you see a French president coming into a country and his agenda is for 3 days, and because he wants to exploit and the president does not accept him, he gets angry and leaves in the middle of the night and does not wait the next day. We should have to accept that. What did the leader reject? Those are the aspects we are saying. Our problem is that it should be bilateral. When a president comes in an African country, in front of Africa, on the African soil, and in South Africa that they are hypocrites, no, there are things that we will not accept as Africans. However, I also accept it. I'm not saying that our African leaders are angels. That's not what I'm saying. But all I'm saying is that if there is any agreement, it should be bilateral. Now, talking about an president, it's all about what the person delivers. Why is nobody condemning the president of Guinea Equatorial? He's the longest serving African president. He's in power. He has age. But I don't see people condemning him because maybe he's giving what the people want and people seem to be okay. So age should not be something that we use to criticize because there are people that have age that are doing more better and there are young people that are not even doing better. So when we are analyzing this perspective, we should all bring this and tell our people because our people are viewing and they can be able to analyze and know more. So age is not the problem. Somebody coming to Greek come. There is no diplomatic visit, Dr. Ako, that a president will come in a country and does not meet the family of another president, they will meet, have dinner, and shake hands. So in the case of Cameroon, it should not be a problem that someone greeted someone. And Cameroonian, to be very honest with you people, the movement of Frank Biya is not a political party. He has not come out to say anything that he's interested. So any other thing that people say on social media or else is not founded.
Kediah, no, honestly, look, I want to thank Kediah very sincerely. If we have to build the Africa we want, and we reason in this type of, a hula balo, I will not be in support. We have not talked of age. I've talked of durability in power. Maybe you don't get it well. I've talked those who hijack power for 40 years. I have not identified somebody's age. Get it well. And if we believe one of the virtue of a successful leader is preparing a successor, the moment you get to power and you're unable to prepare somebody that takes after you, that is the beginning of your failure.
Then that's democracy.
I want us to get it right.
Democracy,
the most successful democracy in the world is where power is alternative. As many people takes over power, so too the nation develops. Count me one. Where we have
why you prepare a successor is no longer democracy. Why you prepare a successor is no longer and staying in power. The president of Guinea Equatorial was there before Paul Biya. He has stayed in power before.
They have criticized him. He assassinated the brother. Maybe you don't know the story. If we are not talking about it, doesn't mean we don't condemn it. He assassinated the brother to be the president. And you don't know what we have said. Please, 1 minute. One of the things which I know with Africa and the new dispensation is that preparing a leader is not imposing on the people. Prepare a leader. I'm telling you that Barack Obama became president. Hillary Clinton, Secretary General, went for election. He never won. Joe Biden was the vice president, became president later. Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, they are prepared. Leadership is prepared, but not imposed. The people should make such distinction.
Mr. Dr. Ako, please, I would first of all want to divert and debunk one of your assertions. Durability of power isn't a threat to good development.
That's what we are saying.
Most of the countries that have developed themselves today, look at them, they developed themselves under the monarchical form of government. From the UK to the US that they've hidden, to France, let me tell you, for the French language to be imposed, please, for the French language to be imposed, so many people had to die in France. The issue is when we have these nihilistic tendencies of always blackmailing and painting, demonizing our own countries. Please, it's not a Pan-African spirit.
No, you've not getting it. But when we talk about monarchical, in Britain, what we are saying, David Cameron was there for how many? 2 decades. Angela Merkel was there for 2 decades. It was not a problem.
Angela made 2 decades? Check well again.
I said close to 2 decades.
What do you mean close to? And you also
more than 15 years.
No, please.
David Cameron, more than 15 years.
Please, I've not landed. The issue is that I was cut. I just wanted to say that if democracy is what we really want to impose, the same democracy can decide that a head of states comes on power, is voted, and stays there for life. Like what we had in China, the democratic centralism. Why is this issue of politicization and continuous alternation of power that sometimes a president is barely knowing the country and it's that time that we're changing him? I'm not of that school of thought. But first of all, I want to just land at the level of the words of Mr. Teguia. In all of this debate, which we have, let's not deviate from the topic. Sometimes we become too emotional. The recolonization of Africa. I think that he said it in a nutshell. When we look at international trade, we should remember that there are no permanent friends, but there is permanent interest. So the whole debate of Russia, let's just try to contribute together with our leaders to help them to choose the better friend. That is just, yes, the better devil. Or to always ensure that the interest of Cameroon nation is always protected despite the changes at the level of international, the international level.
Okay, Teguia, speak before we hand over the mic to Elijah. Remember, guys, we are having 7 minutes to the end of the show.
Yeah, I want to react to what my brother Kediah said a few minutes ago. If my memory doesn't fail me, you did introduce him as a communicator of the ruling party.
Yeah, it's a political analyst. I want to indicate that he's not talking in today's show on that ticket. He's talking today as a political analyst. But sometimes he intervenes in shows as political communicator with the CPDM. But for this show, he is intervening as a political analyst.
Okay.
So which means that he doesn't have the mandate today to speak on behalf of his party.
Yeah, but the fact still remains.
This is
he
Africa.
was weeping. Yeah, my brother Kediah was weeping, decrying the injustices meted on us by the French. But I want to remind my brother Kediah that it is his party that has been in power for the past 38 years or so. Do we agree? 40 years in power. And if you add to that, remember that the CPDM was just a transformation of the... Is that not true? The CPDM was just the transformation of the former UNC, which therefore means that since independence, it is the CPDM that has been ruling us. I think we agree. The change of name, Mr. Kediah, let us agree on something. When the CPDM was created in Bamenda, this is what...
created in Bamenda.
Listen to me. When it was created, let me go express myself fully. This is what the statement that was made, that the former UNC is now transformed into the CPDM. That is why most of the barons of the former UNC simply moved into the CPDM, which means that it is the same mindset, the same mentality, and possibly the same policies. So I can't understand how you have been exercising power in Cameroon for over 60 years, and then you decry the fact that we are being exploited by the French. May I remind you that it is these same French people who massacred our nationalists, who were fighting for genuine independence in this country, and put in power somebody who initially was not even in favor of immediate independence, Mr. Kediah. When we talk, of course, he was not in favor of, remember, there is a lot.
Let's not make him out of CPDM. Let's not make him out of CPDM. Yeah. Because our other African nations might not understand the details of all of that. Probably some other time we'll have the opportunity.
Anyway, Mr. Bo, the point I wanted to make is this, that when we talk about colonization, we have this regrettable tendency of always pointing an accusing finger at foreign countries. But we have internal colonizers. We have domestic colonizers. The leaders who impose themselves on us, the puppets who are handpicked by foreign powers, are simply the relays of the former colonizers. Which therefore means that it may be very, very difficult and tricky for us to actually break away from the shackles of colonization, because those people call themselves our leaders. We know very well that these guys are not there for us.
Thank you. Elijah.
If your prayer is President Bobia, he'll be there forever.
Elijah Enoaku, let's get to you now. We're sorry we didn't marginalize you in the studio. We know you are there. Elijah's a gentleman. He didn't just want to cut in and come. Elijah, you have the mic. You want to react to some issues?
Yes, Mr. Bo, I watch with a little bit of pain. I have to be honest. I have to share my feelings. I watch with a little bit of pain when I see young men defending dictatorship in the name of continuity. It pains. Gentlemen in the studio, I know all of us are from Cameroon. So you want to talk about Cameroon. This country in 1982, when the current president was taking power, according to United Nations Development Index, this country ranked the same as Dubai. It ranked the same as South Korea. It ranked the same as a lot of the Gulf nations. What is the comparison today between us and those countries? And you stay on the studio there and you're defending dictatorship? Nobody's saying that somebody's doing well, he should immediately be removed from power. We are talking about a continuous decline in the economy. We are talking about anarchy. We are talking about demoralization of people to exercise their political will in the country. And we are saying here, somebody's saying that, oh yeah, you're not against removing people because of this. We are not talking about that. Somebody even mentioned about the fact that the UK is there. That is a parliamentary system. The Queen, it's a figurehead. The Queen does not rule the UK. And that cannot be an example to say that because the monarchy there, therefore we should allow monarchies to Africa. No.
Okay, Elijah.
Please.
Okay, Elijah, talk. We have a few minutes. Could you continue and land maybe?
Yes, but let me just finish, Mr. Bo. I know you guys, you're in studio and I don't have much time to talk. But let me say this. If you take the case of Equatorial Guinea that somebody mentioned, I do not understand. If we live in Africa, we do not understand what's going on in Africa. That is a man that has killed even members of his own family to become where he is. That is a man that has utilized his own ethnic group and put in power. That is a man that has used his own son to control more than 15% of the economy of the nation. And we're using that as a yardstick? Are we kidding in Africa? Please, if Africa needs to develop, young people like all of us sitting here, we need to emancipate our brain. We have in Cameroon, how many million people? 36 million people. So equally, we are saying we have 36 million morons who do not know how to do anything. They can never rule. They can never lead the nation. It is only an 80-year-old grandfather who can lead that nation. That's exactly what we're saying. The rest are morons. They can't do anything. Please, let's be serious.
Thank you. Time for us to close the show, guys. We are running short of time. I think we'll have the opportunity to talk about Cameroon.
Okay.
Every day you have a Kum Donat at 7 p.m. Prime R. Tomorrow you're going to have House of Commons. So this is the program for us to talk Africa. Let's not make it Cameroon, guys. Time for us to close the show. Your last word, Yagaka Gabriel.
I think that in societal construct, you just have what we say an arsenal of knowledge that comes up for us to study. I still think that we should revise our position on longevity in power as an implication on decline of development. I want us to look at the other lane as a possibility of really achieving a process that may take a very long time. And since we always come to the conclusion that it is just alternation that can, I will give it something to think about later on, wherein other topics may come in for us to really elaborate on this position of ours. But as a take-home assignment, as a take-home message, what we have in our mind is that in the recolonization of Africa by the so many countries that are coming, we only have to try to contribute towards our leaders, to help our leaders to be able to ratify better treaties that would help us, because at the end of the day, we will need to be partners in international games or treaties.
Teguia, Isidor, thank you so much for coming. Your last word, please.
Thanks, Mr. Bo. If there is anything I would like to tell my African brothers, as far as the theme is concerned, the recolonization of Africa, let me start by deviating a little bit. Because when you say recolonization, it presupposes that at a given point there was a break, and that the process has started all over again. I want to disagree, Mr. Bo. The colonization of Africa has always been continuous. There was just a change of name in the 60s when we gained independence, because colonization continued under a different form called neocolonization. And the main tools that were used by our former colonial masters are, unfortunately, some of us, that is, some of our leaders. So if we have to decolonize Africa, we must start by being able to choose people who are legitimate, people who are the emanation of the will of the people. Because if that is not done, no matter what we do, those puppets that the foreign powers, put in place in our various countries, they will continue to serve as a relay of the will of those people. They will serve the people to the detriment, they will serve their masters to the detriment of the people who are supposed to have elected them. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ako. Thank you so much for coming for today's program.
Yeah, the pleasure is ours. Always talking Africa, and that I will said with the new dispensation, the African youths need to take their own destiny, and that those who are leading us presently surely are leading us to their graveyards.
Kediah Malangfe.
I'm very happy of debate up to this way, but I'm not I'm angry living for us to call somebody a dictator, somebody that have sacrificed more than 40 years of his life serving our nation. I will call him a dictator. I'm living very unhappy, and I'll pray God give him wisdom for him to continue to lead us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Elijah, thank you so much for always taking time out of your very busy schedule to join us. I want to thank you so much for your contribution and your support for this program, 90 Minutes in Africa.
Thank you for having me, Mr. Bo, and thank you to all the colleagues. We sometimes have heated debates, but it's all for the good of our continent, Africa, and hopefully we learned something and we were able to educate the public. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It was a little bit cold here in Douala, so I caught a little cold. And I thank you for bearing with me. That's why I'm unable to read all your messages that are coming in their numbers. So thank you so much for understanding and for bearing with me. You can join us on our WhatsApp group using the number you find on your screen. And also, I promise you that next time I'm surely going to read all your messages. I want to thank my panelists for their contributions in today's edition of the program, the today's edition of 90 Minutes in Africa, produced by Nolinga, Ewane, with the coordination of Kum Leonard, and supervised by Brian Tambe. I am Bo Elvis, thanking you for watching. See you next week for another edition of the program, God willing.